Stand by for live. And 3, 2, 1. And go.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Once again, welcome to this lecture series at number 4, our humble abode. And it's good to see familiar faces here, and also to those following us live on FB. I do hope that this session will be of benefit to us all. Before we begin today's session, I'd just like to recount this series of talks and that we have had since Syed Muhiyuddin returned for a holiday from Tarim. That in this series in November, we started by listening to his narration on the secrets of Tarim. That basically the idea there was to demonstrate or to show to us that there is in Tarim a living community that is, I would say, the best example of an Islamic community that has survived to all these years. And as you know, Syed Muhiyuddin was a student at Cassis. He's still a student at Cassis, yet to finish his PhD. But he decided to basically complement what he learned, the intellectual components that he learned at Cassis, by going to Tarim to get himself immersed in the life there. Am I right? And following that, it's no secret to you now on that we are both followers of Syed al-Attas. He is, I would say, a hidden gem in our midst. That he is a world-class scholar that very few of us appreciate and understand what he teaches. And what he has been saying all along is big message to us that this is shown, as he said in one of his famous videos on YouTube, in an interview with Sheikh Abdul Samad. Sheikh Abdul Samad asked him, what is the biggest problem that you see in the world today? His answer was loss of adab, which is due to corruption of knowledge, which leads to election of false leaders. So it's a triumvirate there, it's a circle. You can start anywhere, you can address the issues there at any time in our capacity, but what we are focused on, Syed Muhiyuddin and I, in this series is that we want to address the issue of the corruption of knowledge, the misunderstanding to what knowledge is about, and the corruption of our worldview, where we want to live, where we want to go at the end of the day. Over the past week, I learned a new word, autopraxy. What does that mean? That you can actually be a good Muslim by just doing what is prescribed to you at the Islam level. Pray, fast, go for Hajj and whatnot. You do that with all sincerity, you'll get there. We'll meet God's approval by doing that. But there is, I think I can't quite relate whether this is a hadith or not, but the meaning of taqwa. That sometimes when if you're riding a horse and you don't want your horse to escape, you can just have faith in God and say that, God, please don't let this horse escape. But you could also tie the rope and tie the horse to a pole so that you sort of mitigate the risk of the horse running away even more. So there are some people among us who have to be more deliberate in terms of defining or outlining where we should go in our community. Let's think about what our objectives are and how we should get there. And I like to explain to my friends and that sometimes, you play lots of stuff with a stick and a ball, but you could be playing hockey, but you could be playing golf. So we could be playing the wrong game. And that's what's happened to our society now, that many of us have succumbed to playing the wrong game. We're no longer playing the right game. So most of our efforts are about getting people to realign what our game is. And that's where the worldview of Islam comes from. And coming from the worldview of Islam, or following from that, it's the issue of knowledge. What is knowledge? And or ilmu. Growing up, when people talk about somebody going to mencari ilmu, it's about finding some magic words in order to doa and to get what they want. That's ilmu. But to me, having been through our education system and whatnot, to me, ilmu is whatever that you need in order to do the right things, to do whatever that you want to do properly. That's ilmu in kau pasukan Dato'. And so that's where we are now. So we started with talking about Tarim, an example of an Islamic community, and then the second talk was about explaining the effect of secularization to our minds, to our worldview. And next we talk about tasawuff, what it is. To me, tasawuff is a framework for us how to operate, how to be meaningful about our religiosity. And yeah, there are lots of things, and tasawwuf is a big subject. It's a continuous thing that you do, that you pursue. But it's a mindset, mainly. And where Syed Muhiyuddin comes from is that he is explaining tasawwuf in modern philosophical terms, in terms that we modern people, or with our education background, can relate to, as opposed to what was there before that comes from the pondok environment, where I would say that knowledge of the rest of the world was rather lacking, has been lacking from that environment, coming from that environment. So Syed Muhiyuddin has managed to put together or re-explain what tasawwuf is in the context, in the modern context, in the context of the various influences that have hit upon us without us realizing it for the past 50 to 100 years even. And after that, I got lost as to what else to talk about. And Syed Muhiyuddin suggested that we talk about, I can't even remember his name, Sheikh Abdul Samad al-Falembani. I had never even heard of him before this, actually, very much due to my lack of exposure to the Islamic sciences. But he was a Sufi exponent in the 18th century, no, 17th century, or 17th and 18th century. So little was known about him that we don't even know in what year he was born. And in one of the narrations that I came across, it seemed like he lived until the age of 130 years old, which is not likely. But anyway, he died in 1830, and his most famous publication or work is called Sarul Salikin, which is something that I just came to know has been very popular, especially from the Pondok environment. And what is it? It is largely a treatise on Al-Ghazali's Muhyiddin. So it has been there. That is, what we are doing today is to resume our knowledge tradition, our tradition of Islam, following Islam as authentically as possible, following the chain of transmitters that have come to us from the Middle East, from the Prophet, through to Tarim, through to here, and through to maybe in where do the people from Tarim stop in the Indian continent? Gujarat and whatnot. Yeah. So from there, we got people like Hamzah Fansuri and Rudin Raniri to bring the Islam that we know today, that we are practicing today, which of course have undergone some misunderstanding, some corruption, and there's so many others, Daud Fatani, Toku Palo, and whatnot. And these are real heroes, and they did wonderful things, and really high level of intellectuality, even in those times, and that when you read about it, it's amazing. Okay. But I know I've taken too much of Syed Muhiyuddin's time today. So sorry. So without much further ado, please, Syed Muhiyuddin, tell us more about Sheikh Abdul Samad al-Falembani and what he did and what were the challenges, what was his life and times like. Thank you very much.
Before I begin, I just want to say how profound the reflection of Haji Kamaluddin was. Inshallah, that basically he helped in his introduction to fuse and synthesize together and thereby connecting the individual talks that we've had in these sessions that would now lead us to Sheikh Abdul Samad of Palembang. Yes, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, wa salatu wa salamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursalin, Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Inshallah, today we will be deliberating on the life and the teachings of a great Muslim scholar of the 18th/19th century. He was born, as Haji Kamaluddin mentioned, in the early decade of the 18th century, according to some of the scholars. My chief source will be Professor Dr. Megawati Morris' study on Imam al-Ghazali's influence on Malay thinkers, as well as the sources that she drew from Haji Wan Muhammad Saghir's study of Sheikh Abdul Samad Palembang, as well as another Indonesian historian scholar, Professor Azumardi Azra, yes, who wrote on the network of Muslim scholars in the 17th and 18th centuries, or rather from the 16th century onwards. And to give a bit of a background, yes, before we can understand who Sheikh Abdul Samad was, we must understand the growth and the spread of Islam in the Malay archipelago. Yes, that as we know, the 18th century is rather late. Yes, because as last week, I suppose Professor Zaini was deliberating on the Batu Bersurat of Terengganu. Yes, the Terengganu stone inscription was already dated 702 Hijrah or 1303. Yes, so that means to say by the 14th century, you already have an Islamic kingdom in this part of the world, more than 150 years before Muhammad al-Fatih went into Constantinople. Yes, and 2 centuries, full centuries before Galileo, yes, was housed in prison, yes, for speaking about the heavens. Yes, while in this part of the world, you know, the Batu Bersurat was, let us say, Batu Bersurat is a testament that the science of astronomy was already practiced in this part of the world. Yes, nevertheless, some things are very important with regards to the Islamic intellectual tradition before Sheikh Abdul Samad came to the scene. One of which was that, according to the earliest record, perhaps, of the written works, some of them included the Primbon, or the series of writings by Sunan Bonang, and Sunan Bonang was one of the 9 saints of Java. Yes, and he was in the 15th century, and it is said that Sunan Bonang referred to in his writings Imam al-Ghazali and Imam al-Nawawi. And that is because, as Professor al-Attas has established in Historical Fact and Fiction, that being one of the 9 saints of Java, arguing rationally as well as scientifically based on the availability of the silsilas, family trees and genealogies, yes, that these saints, they were not merely legendary mythological figures, they were real men, they were descendants of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whose ancestry reaches up to the Prophet's grandson, Sayyidina Hussein, via Hadramaut. Yes. So Islamization in this part of the world came with a particular characteristic, in that the exponents of Islam in this part of the world came with the madhab of Imam al-Shafi'i with regards to religious practice, or what Haji Kamaluddin calls orthopraxy, yes, right practice. And with regards to their belief, they are established in the Aqidah of the Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, yes, of the Maturidi Ash'ari variant, yes, which is the orthodoxy component. But at the same time, yes, Islam, as we know, based on the Hadith Jibril, which we shared the last time, consists of yes, not just practice as well as right belief, but also excellence, yes, in being, yes, because Islam is a state of being before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is encapsulated in the prophetic statement to worship Allah as if you saw Him, yes, and if not, then to be aware that He sees you, and to also be aware that your heart, yes, the duty, let us say, to purify your heart is a religious obligation. So therefore tasawwuf is an integral principle in the Islamic intellectual tradition, as it can be rooted in prophetic practice. As we know historically, yes, the scholar who has been singularly identified, yes, as the proof of Islam within the Sunni tradition, Imam al-Ghazali, was the one to have effected the rapprochement between tasawwuf and the Sharia. Yes, there were, before the time of Imam al-Ghazali, certain tendencies to split between these two. Yes, as if to say that practitioners of the Sharia would condemn the people of tasawwuf, that these were, let us say, deviant. Yes, and the people of tasawwuf, on the other hand, they condemn the practice of the people of Sharia, saying that these people are shallow. Yes, but in truth, yes, Imam al-Ghazali gathered them together, yes, within a framework whereby tasawwuf is really the intensification of the practice of Sharia, or as Professor Attas defines it in modern day English, it is the practice of Sharia, but at the level of ihsan. Yes, it is the practice of Sharia at the maqam of ihsan. So the effective strategy of Imam al-Ghazali in writing the Ihya Ulumuddin, yes, led to the reconciliation between these two tendencies, and reabsorbed, yes, tasawwuf within religious practice. In truth, if you look at the silsila, or the line of teachers of Imam al-Ghazali, which let us say makes him belong to the chain of scholars, you will find in his chain Junayd of al-Baghdad, yes, Junayd of Baghdad. And in Junayd of Baghdad, it is said that the knowledge of tasawwuf, or the knowledge of us, the Sufis, yes, they say, Imam Junayd said, is derived from the Quran and the Hadith, yes, and no one is to study tasawwuf, yes, except for he who has memorized the Quran, or he who has written Hadith. In other words, knowledge of the Quran and the Hadith is fundamental for the practice of tasawwuf. Nevertheless, so this Ghazalian impact, yes, made it such that from time to time, yes, this renewal of Imam al-Ghazali would be pursued by scholars when they begin to see these tendencies. Yes, so al-Ghazali became is it called a centripetal force? Yes, the one that gathers together, or is it the centrifugal? Centrifugal pulls things together, and centripetal spreads them apart. Yes, okay. So Imam al-Ghazali became the centrifugal force that whoever amongst the scholars, yes, who begins to see the society, yes, in an age of a breakdown, in an age where they are being split, yes, and torn asunder in various directions, reviving al-Ghazali would pull them together. This has been the time and tested strategy for many of the scholars, including the likes of Imam al-Haddad in Hadramaut, and al-Ansari in Egypt, yes, including the Moroccan scholars, including those in India. So East, West, and Center, they have all appreciated the Ghazalian effort. And nowhere is this more seen than in the 16th and 17th centuries in the Haramain. So one of the most important things to happen for the Islamic intellectual tradition in those centuries was that by then a network of scholarship was established in Mecca, and this is natural, isn't it? Because Muslims from all around the world would perform the Hajj, yes, and there is a Hajj season, yes. Of course, what is wajib is once in your lifetime, but for scholars, they understand that owing to the difficulty of travel in the past, they would spend a long time there. Yes, so therefore, Mecca, the Haramain, became a focal point of the meeting of scholars from all around the world. Yes, and many scholars were centered there in Mecca. So therefore, this included the scholars who came from this part of the world to study all the sciences that they wanted to pursue. And as we know, as late as the 20th century, yes, we have in the figure of Sheikh Abdul al-Mandili, who wrote his Penawa Bagi Hati, yes, in 1970 or something like that, yes. No, earlier, 70 years ago, 1950, yes. 1950, yes, he spent 30 years, yes, being a teacher at Makkah. And there was already, until today, you can still find, yes, descendants of the people from Patani, yes, descendants of the people from various parts of the Malay world, whose forefathers migrated to Makkah. So, so the chains of knowledge, yes, chains of knowledge of which our pondok schools, yes, derive their silsila of learning from, mainly would converge in the great scholars who resided in Makkah in the 16th and 17th centuries, and these scholars in turn would have their chains of learning connecting ultimately up to the Prophet ﷺ. And this is something very important, because in our time, yes, one of the factors, yes, leading to the corruption of knowledge is because there is now loss of authority. Yes, there is a collapse of authority, wherein a person may freestyle himself, yes, as a teacher of sorts, yes, whose knowledge was not ascertained, yes, whose understanding is not ascertained, and therefore bring about a lot of chaos and confusion amongst the general population. But in the traditional setting, yes, learning was when people ask, why is it that we did not produce in this part of the world any institutions, the likes of Al-Azhar, yes, in Egypt, or the likes of Kairawan in North Africa, our scholars respond because in this part of the world, the scholars were the institutions. Yes, the scholars were the institutions. In other words, it is at the hands of the scholars that you are trained under. Yes. Then after which, when you have demonstrated, yes, skill, understanding, and practice, when the teacher deems it fit, then he shall grant you a license to teach, yes, an ijazah, so to speak. Yes, it is not a piece of paper that we understand today. Yes, it is rather the product of a lifelong learning and companionship with the teacher, and the teacher have then checked your understanding, and then this student then becomes a person who's authoritative to speak on matters of religion. Yes. Nevertheless, this was the situation of the 16th and 17th century. But at the same time, during the 16th and 17th century, according to the divisions of history as Professor Attas has outlined, this was also during the time that the scholars began to write more extensively in this part of the world on metaphysical matters. Yes, they started to be enamored by the writings of Ibn Arabi and the commentators of Ibn Arabi. Yes, and these scholars who wrote on the subject of existence and being, yes, were collectively called the Wujudiyah. Yes, meaning to say, to refer to the fact that their subject matter is existence. Of course, there's two kinds of Wujudiyah according to Ar-Raniri. He said there are the Wujudiyah al-Muwahhidah, meaning to say the true existentialists, and then there's the Wujudiyah Mulhidah, the false existentialists. In other words, the deviant existentialists are those who subscribe to pantheism for example. Yes, pantheism, the idea that everything is God and God is everything. Or those who subscribe to false notions, such as the belief that they are themselves God. Yes, all these sort paying homage to the Atman Brahman distinction of the God lodged within. But as for the true existentialists, they are those who understood, yes, the proper significance of the worldview of Tawheed. So why is it that they were having a discussion on being in existence? Well, that shows that our forefathers, yes, the Malays, that there was a big change that was occurring in from the depths of their being. That there was a change, and this change was reflected in their language, in their perception of reality. And this occurred to show to us that their grasp and their understanding of our religion is at a very deep level. Yes? That they are not stuck at the level of the superficial. They are not stuck at the discussion of the sundry matters. Of course, when they discuss the sundry matters, it doesn't mean that these things are to be taken lightly necessarily. It doesn't mean that just because they deliberate on metaphysical matters, they take the Sharia lightly. Yes, because Ar-Raniri himself, yes, one of the biggest exponents of metaphysical philosophy or metaphysical tasawuff, so to speak, he wrote one of the most brilliant treatises on fiqh called the Sirat al-Mustaqim. Yes. Rarely surpassed in time. It still holds its ground as one of the most beautifully written treatise in the Malay language with regards to Shafi'i fiqh. Yes. Nevertheless, as the century draws to a close, and with the beginning of the 18th century, the next batch of scholars, of course in the 17th century we mentioned Raniri just now, Pansuri, Sumatrani, but there is also during that century a tendency and a movement towards aligning with the Sharia, out of fear that in truth this metaphysical discourse, although it is not wrong, yes, the idea is that it is abstract and has the potential risk that a person who delves into these matters would end up in the false conclusions. Yes, so therefore the scholars consciously took a direction towards translating and explaining and composing more and more works that will align the understanding of the masses, the understanding of the common people and the common folk, their audiences, to the understanding of the Sharia. So you see, for example, Sheikh Abdul Rauf of Singkil, he wrote one of the first, perhaps the first, complete translation or complete tafsir of the Quran, called the Tarjuman al-Mustafid, containing tafsir of al-Baydawi, the tafsir Jalalain, and the tafsir of Imam al-Baghawi as his sources. He also wrote a treatise on the 40 hadith of the Prophet with commentary. And earlier on, Ar-Raniri had written, aside from his diatribe against the false wujudiyah, Ar-Raniri had also written, as we said, a book on fiqh, yes, the Sirat al-Mustaqim. He had written on Tibyan fi Ma'rifati Adyan, a book exposing Tawheed, yes, and the deviations that occurred, yes. And he also wrote a collection of hadith and various other genre. After that, at the turn of the century, you begin to see then the generation of the likes of Sheikh Abdul Samad Palembang, Sheikh Daud bin Abdullah Fatani, Abdul Wahab al-Bugisi. Now these are scholars who study with scholars who share the same lineage as the 17th century scholars that we mentioned. But they now take a conscious effort, yes, they take a conscious effort out of their realization that politically there has now been changes in the world. One of which is the incursion of the Dutch, yes, and how the Dutch has expanded their sphere of influence, yes, so as to disrupt many of the activities of the local sultans, yes. So knowing then the threat of colonialism and the importance of religious identity, you will see that the scholars of Sheikh Abdul Samad's generation, including Sheikh Daud, yes, that they would compose more treatises in the Malay language as opposed to Arabic to make it available for the general public. And with regards to Sheikh Daud, he initiated the founding of many pondoks. Because why? The establishment of the pondoks ensure unity. Yes, religion is the main source of unity for this archipelago, isn't it? And if we have confusion with regards to our religion, it would lead to disunity. That's a basic security understanding. Yes, that's a basic internal security understanding. But yet, yes, we do not. For today, forgive me for speaking like this. Do we take religion still, yes, as a critical, yes, as a critical subject matter, yes, for stability, for unity, and even for cultural development? Because it is through religion that the virtues of tolerance can be defended. It is through religion, yes, that that charity is to be defended. That it is through religion that adab, yes, adab in this part of the world can never be taught separately from religion, at least for the Muslims who form the majority of this part of the world. Yes. So if there is corruption of knowledge with regards to knowledge of religion, there will be implications that would be seen, yes, not only in the socio-cultural realm, but it would spill over into the economic realm, it would spill over into the political realm. Yes. Right now what we are seeing is the effect of corruption of knowledge, yes, that leads to the loss of adab. Yes, a person who does not know how to act properly will only act properly as a matter of coincidence, isn't it? Now, with Sheikh Abdul Samad Palembang's generation, therefore, as we said, he was born in Palembang, of a local Malay lineage in terms of his mother, his Palembangi mother, and his father is said to come from Yemen. Yes, according to the historians, Sheikh Abdul Samad father migrated from Sana'a, where he came from Yemen, and I think spent time in Kedah and brought Abdul Samad over there in Kedah when he was relatively a young boy. And Sheikh Abdul Samad was taught the religious sciences by his own father, yes, before being sent to the pondok. Yes, and after having been sent to the pondok and acquired learning, he then spent 30 years in Makkah and 5 years in Medina. So that's the quality of scholars that we had. And he studied with some of the most prominent scholars, including the Sheikhul Islam of the Haramain at that time. Yes, and he was initiated into the Sammaniyah Tariqah. Yes, by Muhammad Muhammad As-Samman, and at the same time that he was either a student or co-students with Murtada Zabidi. Murtada Zabidi is a big name in the history of tasawuff for having written an encyclopedic commentary on the Ihya Ulumuddin. Yes, so these were the associates of Sheikh Abdul Samad of Palembang. Yes, and so he was a world-class scholar, and his name was recorded in the biographical dictionaries of the ulama of the 13th century. Yes, or rather of the ulama of the 13th century. 13th century Hijrah. Yes, 18th century Miladi. So Sheikh Abdul Samad, while he spent, as we said, 35 years in Makkah and Medina, we know that he never, let us say, lost his attention with regards to the Malay world. Yes, he kept being updated, and from time to time he composed works and epistles to be sent to this part of the world, eventually returning, of course. But of course, when you are a thinker of that stature, yes, when you are a thinker of that stature, you would be contributing to what you think and what you know to be the essential crisis, or the what is required amongst your people. And this is something that is part and parcel of the living spirit of Islam, as opposed to the crystallized spirit that Haji Kamarudin is speaking about. That one of the causes of the, let us say, fossilization of knowledge is when knowledge can no longer interact with the circumstances. When knowledge no longer interact with the social cultural context, including the economic political context. Instead, it serves the previous context, whereby within the earlier milieu, it served its purpose, while the universal elements and the universal principles of the treatise and and scholarship remains. But certainly, those who inherit such texts, those who inherit the tradition, are duty bound, yes, to explain it within their milieu now. And that is the task which is now being done by Professor Naqib al-Attas. So that's why when he wrote, he could have written another treatise of tasawwuf, yes, but instead he chose to write on the positive aspects of tasawwuf to deal with the problems at the level of philosophy of science. Yes, he could have written again an elaboration of some aspects of the traditional treatises like the Ihya, but he wrote instead on happiness, because that's now a crucial problem that's being suffered by our generation. Yes, so now Sheikh Abdul Samad Palembang, let us say, is mainly known for two works which has been incorporated into the pondoks and pesantrens, and this is something very important. Professor Attas mentioned in the Muslim Dilemma that one of the causes of our dilemma, yes, where we shot ourselves in the foot, that my language, is because tasawwuf, yes, has been looked at with suspicious eyes, and therefore removed from the body of knowledge, and given a bad name only due to a handful of people, yes, a handful of people who misappropriated it in the first place. You are not to blame an entire discipline just by a few lots of people like this, yes, especially if it's as integral as tasawwuf, yes. And one of the things that Professor Attas said, that unless and until we have incorporated tasawwuf into the curriculum of our education, we cannot solve our ethical dilemma, yes, because ethics, yes, is gained mainly through tasawwuf, yes. So, but this being said, Sheikh Abdul Samad Palembang for the 18th century have done so, yes. He has written two treatises, of which they are as good as curriculums, and was used as curriculums, yes, for some of the pondoks and the pesantrens, including for teachings in the suraus and the masjids, yes, that made our people, when you look at not the Melayu Baru in Dato' Ali Taufik's coining, but when you look at our forefathers, our great-grandfathers and great-grandfathers, I suppose, as in the 19th century and before, you look at the writings of Raja Ali Haji, how beautiful their expression of budi and tertib and pantun, yes, how they write historical treatises as a matter of moral consolidation. They were really people who were immersed in the humanities. They were belles lettres, yes, they were people of adab in that sense. When you look at governance, yes, governance based on the model of Raja Ali Haji in the 19th century, yes, all the officers of the Qadi, yes, the Sultan, including his advisors, all follow, yes, the requirements of adab, because our scholars were basically trained in adab, yes. Now we have removed adab as a component from education, isn't it? So if people are not taught adab at schools, nor at the level of the universities, how are they expected to gain it? Yes, it's there in the face. It's the white elephant in the room. But no one, no one would want to address the issue. Yes, because we are now prevented because of the term. It's been given a bad name. It's deviant. So therefore, let's not look at it like that. But with that's why history is very important, according to some intellectuals. They say, the past is a different country. Yes, the past is a different country. They do things differently there. And just as a person who is a traveler in the world, yes, ends up expanding his horizons to see what are the practices of people in the different countries that he can get inspiration from, similarly, a person who is a student of history will be able to see, yes, let us say history is the laboratory of philosophy. In other words, to see what is the result of the practice of a particular ethics, the result of the practice of a particular philosophy. In our time, yes, we are seeing, yes, what principles are at work, secular principles, yes, humanism, yes, secularism and humanism, these are, and liberalism, these are the fundamental principles in our time. These are incorporated within our educational system, and we are now only reaping the results of that. You cannot expect anything else, yes. And as for Islam as a living religion, we have stripped away the ethical component. We have stripped away the metaphysical component. We have stripped away the historical component such that the Muslim can be comfortable within the present day environment, yes, and not suffer, let us say, the subjective-objective dichotomy, yes. For Muslims today, because we learn only the ibadah aspects, ibadah portions of our religion, so therefore, as we step out of the surah in the masjid, yes, what practices do we adopt at work? What practices do we adopt? Yes, are they in line with the principles of the Sharia or not? In truth, yes, not just in nomenclature. Yes. So with when we look at the works of Sheikh Abdul Samad Palembang, and I think I will not deliberate too much because of our limitations. I'll just look at these two books, yes, the Hidayah as-Salikin and the Sayrus Salikin, or sometimes read as the Siyarus Salikin. Both readings are possible, and scholars have defended either readings. Prominent scholars have defended either readings, so I'll just adopt for ease so that I don't have to change every time, Sayrus Salikin. Now, the book Hidayah to Salikin is a translation come commentary of the Bidayatul Hidayah of Imam al-Ghazali. The Bidayatul Hidayah was written by Imam al-Ghazali as an introductory text. The purpose of Bidayatul Hidayah is to allow beginners to be on the track to achieve taqwa, yes, which is an internal quality through external practices. It's ideal for beginners who want to return to religion. Yes, right now, so many people in our society, in our community, in our generation are beginning to feel, some of them are people in middle age, yes, or upwards. They want to return to the religion, isn't it? Because now they feel that perhaps whatever education that they've received in their youth, perhaps some of them who were trained and educated abroad, they feel that the content of education does not fulfill, yes, his requirements as a Muslim. Because as a Muslim, there are kinds of knowledge which is considered fardu ain, in order that you can have orthodoxy and orthopraxy, in order that you can have right knowledge and right practice. And this is not gained certainly by studying one of the vocational sciences. It is not obtained by studying mathematics. You cannot obtain fardu ain by studying history, by studying the social sciences. You need to study fardu ain. Yes. Unfortunately, however, we live in a time whereby it is not easy to find guides, yes, who will reveal to us what exactly do you need to begin with, yes, and what you at this age need to possess sufficiently so that you can practice and so that you can be saved. But instead, we are served, yes, if unfortunate, yes, we are served, let us say, dishes of religious ceramah like that possesses no real content, or that becomes a space for an individual to promote his own school, or for an individual to promote his agenda, and so on and so forth, instead of fulfilling the role of the teacher, which is to inculcate fardu ain to the students. So here is Sheikh Abdul Samad still providing to us 2 centuries or 3 centuries later what you need. read the Bidayatul Hidayah of Imam Al-Ghazali. And if you're in the Malay, within the Malay context, read the Hidayatul Sadiqin of Sheikh Abdul Samad Palembang. Because why? In the Bidayatul Hidayah, or rather in the Hidayatul Sadiqin, which is expanded from the Bidayatul Hidayah, Sheikh Abdul Samad includes what you need to know in terms of Aqidah, what you need to know in terms of the category of knowledge which is obligatory upon individual. He specifies what it is that you need, how much of it do you need, yes, and then he specifies these are the practices that you need to do, yes, and how are you to do it excellently. These are the du'as that you read, yes, and then so these things are all wajib, yes. Wajib first and foremost is how to perform the ibadah that is obligatory upon you. Prior to that, aqidah, ibadah. Following that is ma'siyah, yes. Following that are the sins of the body and how to avoid them. So following the sins of the body, Imam Al-Ghazali stopped at just mentioning 3 of the major sins of the heart. But Sheikh Abdul Samad goes on to deliberate all the major sins of the heart. Yes? Because a person who performs his ibadah, but at the same time continues in a state of ma'siyah, is basically a person who is at loss with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, isn't it? So tasawuff is the discipline that teaches you precisely how to remove and absolve yourself, yes, from continuous sinning, first from the body and then from the heart. And then Sheikh Abdul Samad continues by deliberating on the virtues, the saving virtues. Any of these virtues, these attributes of the heart, should you possess it, has the capacity to save you, yes, to bring you to Jannah. And then he talks about ethics, yes, ethics, and the spheres of ethics. First, he talks about the spheres of ethics pertaining to a human being and his creator, the most fundamental of ethics. Because if there is no ethics between you and God, how can you establish sincerity? Because it is through the sincerity with God that you can become sincere between human beings. It is through sincerity with God that you can be sincere to yourself. It is through sincerity with God that you begin to observe in the natural world Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation. When you look at the consequence today, where people are being unjust to themselves, being unjust to each other amongst humanity, being unjust to the physical environment, these are merely symptoms, isn't it? It is symptoms of the lack of knowledge, yes, or corrupted knowledge that does not contain what they need to know, yes. And who would have thought that a text as simple as the Hidayatul Salikin would contain this? Who would have thought, yes, that in dia panggil kitab kuning, isn't it? In these ancient pages is contained the elixir, is contained that which is required to transform a person. Of course, the teacher is crucial here, isn't it? It is not necessary that just because you buy the book, you will be able to see all of these things. Although it is the very content, but sometimes the method of teaching has to be such that you have to be awakened, isn't it? You have to be connected between that and yourself. There has to be a double movement of going to the text and yourself. This is what awakens. This is what is required in the teaching of such a text. So one thing is to reacquire our national treasures such as the Hidayatul Salikin. The other is to acquire again the proper technique and method of teaching it. Yes. Then he talks about duty to God, duty to oneself, duty to fellow human beings. As for duty to fellow human beings, he specifies it. Yes. Duty to parents, duty to friends, duty to teachers, and then he speaks about duty to strangers. Yes. To fellow Muslims who you do not know, who you meet from time to time, yes, at the golf court, in the golf course, you meet them every now and then. You meet them at KLIA. How are you to act with them? Yes, all of these things are taught. And what have we substituted for this? Have we really given our children something that which is better than this? Of course, we know that some of us spend much more, isn't it? But do we produce good children or not? Are our teenagers good? Yes, as a result of this of the alternative education, because we refuse to look at these books. Dia kata ini kitab kuning, it is a sign of the corruption of the intellect. Ini cara orang lama, you know. People say this kitab kuning is anti-modern, isn't it? Or whatever it is that they may say. That how could they know what to teach us? They don't even know computers, and we know computers. They don't know cars, we know cars. We know San Francisco at the back of our heads and so on, and they don't know anything of that. No, these were international scholars. Sheikh Abdul Samad Palembang. If you look at the treatise, the Sairus Salikin, which follows from so those who finish the Hidayatul Salikin, which is a small volume, may proceed to the more voluminous Sairus Salikin, 4 volume. Yes, in present day, in the present day typesetting, it goes to many hundreds of pages. Yes, maybe 800 something pages or 1,000 pages. Yes, Subhanallah, 1,000 pages, one man. Yes, and consisting every important subject in the religion. Because why? The Sairus Salikin is a translation / commentary of the Mukhtasar, or the summary or the essence of the Ihya Ulumuddin of Imam Al-Ghazali. And he incorporated, yes, in his Sairus Salikin, not only the essential contents of the Ihya, but he also incorporates within it the long tradition of commentary that by his time is 700 years. Yes, by our time now 900 over years since the passing of Imam Al-Ghazali. By his time, 700 years have passed, and there have been lines of scholarship from Al-Maghrib, from the north, from the east, rather from the west, Al-Mashriq, yes, as well as Hind from India. So Abdul Samad Palembang draws from scholarship of North Africa, particularly the lines of the Shadiliyah. He draws from the scholarship of India, particularly from Burhanpuri. He draws from the scholarship of the west, of the east, particularly from the lines of Al-Ansari and the other scholars of Egypt. He draws from the scholars of Makkah. He draws from the scholars of the Malay world. This is not a kampung person, isn't it? This is not a person who's never seen the world. This is the person who's, who's as cosmopolitan as you get, much more cosmopolitan than some of us today even. Yes, his is a mind whose horizons is well expanded. Yes, and yes, of course. But who would have thought that something like this, can be taught in the surahs? Yes, who would have thought that its popularity is such that we find it in the kampung houses of our forefathers? We might think that this must be a simple composition for simple folks. Yes, who cannot tell their centrifugal from their centripetal forces, like myself. But subhanallah, Sheikh Abdul Samad is not like that. Yes, and he wrote it in such a way that it is a full curriculum, a full blast curriculum, because it starts with the ibadat. Now it starts with knowledge. Yes, and his description of knowledge is already complex because he outlines a hierarchy of knowledge. Yes, what is lower, what is higher, what is prior, what is posterior, what is most important. Yes, and then he proceeded to deliberate on the aqidah based on the school of the Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and then he explains each and every one of the ibadat. Yes, including the fiqh based on the Shafi'i school. And then he deliberates on the secrets of every one of these ibadah. What are the spiritual secrets of fasting? What is the spiritual secret of praying? Yes, what is the internal component? How you should you feel? Yes, when you're reading the Quran, what is the proper adab? Yes, this forms the bulk of the first volume of the Sairus Salikin. In the second aspect, yes, following Imam Al-Ghazali, he writes every aspect which requires knowledge, as Haji Kamaluddin was saying. You need knowledge even for leisure. Yes, even for leisure. What more? You need knowledge with regards to society. You look at our issue today. Yes, in the collapse of ethics. You look at the corruption of people's souls in our time. do we know how to act within the limitations of a marriage? Do we know, for example, how to be a husband and how to be a wife? What is the foundation of the marriage? What is the foundational principle of a marriage? What is the purpose of a marriage? Do young couples go into marriages, yes, with this knowledge or not? Do they know what is the philosophy of marriage, the purpose, and how to, and what virtues to cultivate? Yes, how to restrain yourself, how to ensure that the marriage is prolonged, how to make the marriage the foundation of a happy life. These are all contained in the Sheikh Abdul Samad's Falembani's chapter on marriage. He has a chapter on friendship, yes, sohbah, ukhuwah. He has a chapter on work. Now even work has lost its philosophy, isn't it? And entertainment, and all of these subjects, yes, in the second volume of the treatise, or the second quarter. And in the third quarter, he begins then the more subtle and abstract journey of tasawwuf, because he's now taking us on a journey of self-purification, whose result is the ridha of Allah. Yes, the result of the success of the practitioner of tasawwuf is that he returns to Allah in a state where he's ready. Yes, that's the proper practice, the purpose of tasawwuf. He returns to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a condition that he has already attained ma'rifah in this dunya. Isn't it worthwhile as a subject? Yes. If a person may study, for example, principles of econometry. Another person may study astrophysics, or whatever discipline there is. What are the fruits of such subjects? Another person may study, let us say, medicine. The fruit of medicine is that it allows a person to be a physician, to treat a person's physical sickness, and by that virtue serve as your means to sustain your day-to-day living. So what is the outcome? Health. What is the outcome? Money to sustain yourself. Does it give you ma'rifah? Tasawwuf is the science that you have to study to attain ma'rifah. And what is the value of ma'rifah? A person who attains ma'rifah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yes, attains happiness, attains the purpose of living. Yes, and this is in the third and the fourth quarter. So Sheikh Abdul Samad of Palembang wrote the Sayyid Salikin, and we still have it in print, yes, from amongst ourselves, or between ourselves, yes. But I have surveyed several, especially youth, yes, who have never heard of Sheikh Abdul Samad Palembang, who have never heard of the Hidayatul Salikin, who have never heard of the Sayyid Salikin. Or if they have heard of these names, they know of them as names, have never encountered the work. What more benefiting from the work? But if, on the other hand, if the Sayyid Salikin can be brought back, which we need to bring it back, yes, imagine the sort of ethical issues that we can settle, yes. And then of course, yes, there's the problem of issue of teaching how to do it. But these are some of the repositories, these are some of the khazana, yes, that needs to be revived, yes. Fortunately, for those of us who live in the Malay archipelago, our khazana is not just limited to the khazana bumi, hasil bumi. Our khazana also includes the writings of our scholars, yes, inshallah. So I think that would be sufficient for this round. Let us hand it over to Haji Kamaruddin to conduct the next round.
Thank you, Syed, and that was wonderful. I learned a lot today from that, and I hope you did as well. And I'd like to open the floor up for questions to Syed on anything that he talked about today, or anything that he talked about in the past, or anything at all.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Yang berbahagia Ustaz dan juga Tuan Haji Muhyiddin, saya minta maaf sebab selesa cakap dalam bahasa Melayu. But the answer can be in English, insyaAllah. kita telah yakin dan kita telah mengamalkan membaca dan mengajar kitab Sirah Salikin Bihatul Hidayah di pondok-pondok, di sekolah-sekolah tahfiz, pusat pengajian di surau, masjid dan sebagainya. Dan at the very basic level kita telah memperkenalkan siapa Sheikh Abdul Samad al-Falembani, Imam Ghazali dan sebagainya. Tapi perjuangan kita sekarang ni ialah untuk menengahkan kurikulum ini, untuk menengahkan buku ini, untuk menengahkan kitab ini, untuk menengahkan tokoh education ini ke dalam sistem pendidikan kebangsaan kita. Terutamanya dengan adanya PM yang ke-10 ini dan setup KKM, KPM, Kementerian Pelajaran Malaysia yang baru, kemungkinan ada perkara-perkara yang kita boleh lonjakkan dan sampaikan ke atas. Jadi saya minta pandangan Ustaz, apakah tindakan kita sekarang untuk mentransformasikan level understanding kita terhadap knowledge ini ke arah pelaksanaan di peringkat negara. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih Datuk Ahmad Zakaria. Yeah, I should introduce him actually. Datuk Ahmad Zakaria was my classmate in school. Dia pengasas Telaga Biru, an organization that has published, or he himself have written about 40 books that's published by Telaga Biru. And he's also quite a philanthropist and helping have been chasing after disaster areas and doing disaster relief, pursuing disaster relief missions in Yemen, in Indonesia, and whatnot. So he does have a background in this area, which I think his question is very pertinent. Over to you, sir.
But it is asking about the practical side. You can take a step at it and then answer.
Langkah-langkah cadangan-cadangan untuk bawa kata.
Ya, kita ni pun we live in two worlds actually, which is contradictory. Dalam dunia praktikal kita kan, we know what are the big influences, the major influences, and also there are structures in our society where there are people which have different exposures from others. And like I said in the beginning, I've never heard of Sheikh Abdul Samad before Syed Muhiyuddin taught me, because I live in my world. Tapi in your world, these are familiar names. Tapi there has to be a meeting point that kita tahu that kita punya masyarakat sekarang bermasalah, macam-macam masalah. That we are doing lots of things, tapi most of the time we are addressing the symptoms rather than the root causes. And the root causes being, as we have identified, is the corruption of knowledge. And that the solution at the end of the day, if we are to address the root cause, is to address the question of education. And there have been so many efforts. I'm not kira Syed Nakib punya effort it started in the 1960s and 1970s. He went some distance at his step, have been taken down, but his successors have been continuing at Cassis and whatnot. And yeah, it's a very, what they call it, excellent group of people actually that I have been following, that I've had the privilege of rubbing shoulders with. But these are not good enough. There's got to be more of this, more people being aware of what the efforts are in trying to put ourselves back onto the right track. And it can be said that my efforts in running this lecture series is towards that objective actually, to share the understanding that I've had about us being on the wrong track with more people, so that you can spread this understanding to others as well. Because at the end of the day, if you don't know where you're going, then whatever step that you take will be wrong. Right, so there's a need to address the fundamental issue, the core issue, the root issues. So yeah, I do hope that that answers the question partially, that we can't quite tell people what to do. We can't quite tell the government of the day what to do. People do what they want to do. But you can show me examples. You can explain but you can't force people. So, by you, a few of you have been coming to this, and I think we share the same thoughts. We share the same objective, and together we'll do more of this.
I agree. Okay. Okay, so we have two questions in a row, but I'll just address the question for a while. I agree with Haji Kamaruddin, because ultimately, if we want real change to occur, it must be at the level of individuals. Yes, and at the level of individuals, and then individuals at the level of society. This is the most stable route, as opposed to the various others. I say this because modern day politics, especially, is at the mercy of the myopia of democracy. Yes, you may get what you want for supposing you get a favorable government at this particular time, but who knows? Yes, maybe many years down the road, you'd get another group of people, and they would change that vision, and so on. Yes, but on the other hand, if we work on the fundamentals, which is individuals and families and communities, households, then it is established upon a certain foundation. Yes, we should of course, now that the first step is to identify who are the right scholars. The second step is to identify how to transmit the knowledge of the scholars. Like Sheikh Abdul Samad Palembang, a person who wrote the entry on his life in one of the biographical dictionaries mentioned that he is a person who focused on tasawuff. Yes, and he, having understood the significance of Imam al-Ghazali's thought, worked hard to maximize its benefits. And subhanallah, this has been a pattern that has been time and tested, that produces real changes in society. It was done by Imam al-Idrus, yes, in Hadramaut. It was then repeated by Imam Haddad 300 years ago in Hadramaut. And Imam Haddad, since the content is already established, which is Ghazalian in nature, he worked on, and this is, I think, the next step, what you're asking for, because of, at the level of dissemination, what is the most effective means. I would recommend perhaps next month we can do that. Imam al-Haddad's Da'watul Tammah wa Tadhkiratul Ammah, which is in English it's called the perfect summons or something like that. Yes, because one, Imam Haddad categorized the different aspects of society and how to tackle them, and what they need at their level. Yes, down to 8 categories. So we will inshallah specify these things. But I think at the present circumstance, the most effective one is this, like what Haji Kamaruddin is doing, what I hope some of us will be doing also. Open up your houses. Open up your houses, start reading the books, start discussing the books, start teaching your children the books. Yes, and try to ensure first that you get the right content. And then this is the stuff that brings about real changes, such that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will only burden a soul with what it can bear. But of course, if you are higher up in the sphere, let us say, if you are a person who is charged with policy making, if you are a person who is charged with curriculum development and content, if you are a person who is in charge of, let us say implementation, then then the scale of responsibility will be different. Yes, because now you are duty bound to act based on the requirements of your knowledge. Yes, so it doesn't mean that just because this knowledge is not moving in that direction at the general sphere, doesn't mean that individuals cannot act in that direction. So you have to practice. Yes, that's the beauty of tasawwuf. The beauty of Sayrul Salikin is that it is not a knowledge which is qil wa qal. It is not knowledge which is limited to just what you transmit in your words. It is what you reverberate through your being. If a person is honest, if a person is trustworthy, if a person doesn't resort to lying, he will always live like that. If a person does not suffer from envy, if a person whose heart is pure, he or she will cause positive effects around the surrounding. And people will naturally know that this is the sort of person that you want to give trust to. This is the sort of person that is a proper keeper of such trusts. So I think this is where fundamentally you have to repair knowledge, and after that education. And then you move from there where you can get, inshallah.
Maybe we can gather the questions kalau ada dua.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First of all, I would like to thank Tuan Haji Kamuddin and Tuan Syed for the very fruitful and enlightening talk. I just want to relate a little bit on the adab. Knowledge, with knowledge you can practice the proper manner, and of course with that you will take care of your akhlaq, and the pinnacle of it is the adab. But the seed of adab, I believe, would be to implant the feel of kindness in your heart. Of course, we do not reach the level of mercy, which is belong to Allah SWT. But for individual human being, I think all of us should have kind-hearted lah. I think then only you will acknowledge all other good things. Thank you.
Excellent work, Abang Mat. Thanks for the reminder.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Before I open the question or just a small comment, I have to remind dia bukan nak tunjuk pandai dia. I ask question or explain because to reaffirm myself, reaffirm my belief. There will be comment from you that have corrected what I have my mind, not to show off that I'm smart or not show credentials. I've been arguing this for years, and for the last
Private joke.
For the last 7 years, I've not been hitting him. I've been very quiet. I've been following your lectures. I've been listening very, very well, and I've been studying the origin of Islam in Nusantara. Okay, probably most of the Westerners wrote coming from 14th century, from India. I think it's wrong. It started from 7th century. Right, that is the beginning of Malay Sultanate. And because of Islam, we expand to about 70 sultanate that we control the whole of Nusantara, right? The whole from Patani to Malacca to Philippines to Hawaii to Bugis. But Islam was destroyed in a way in the 14th century with the coming of a lot of this Mubalik from India, from this region. They are traders, but they're close to Istana, and they influenced the thought at that time, and maybe the beginning of the corruption of knowledge. Okay, I think if you look at tasawuff, look at Al-Ghazali, you cannot compare Al-Ghazali to anyone. He's one of the greatest philosophers of the world. And he's equivalent to Aristotle. In fact, there's one treatise he wrote. People thought he was Aristotle written himself. And at that time he was at the Istana. The purpose was there to fight against those from the Yunani philosophers who used Islam and who translated the philosophy and infused into the Islamic teaching. But after that he left the Istana, he went out and come back as a Sufi. Now, if you look at the Sufi, the history was started from the Rabia of Basra. But rightly or wrongly, I don't know. Okay, but and today we tell me it will be interesting back to Jibril as something that I knew to me. But I'm more interested in Islam here. So if you look at Islam here, it follows the same pattern as Andalusia. At the beginning, Islam was true. It's basically based on adab. Okay, all the training is to train you as a human being, as a layman. Okay, you must understand Quran is addressing you personally, not to a state. Right? It addresses you personally, because when we were born, when the roh is blown into our soul, then we are given a book, right? That's why now I understand why my parents, dia orang Jawa, tak erti belajar mana tak, dia selalu tegur, kau belajar kau kuat, kau jadi orang. I never take it very seriously until recently I realized that when I'm getting old, there's a difference between jadi orang and jadi binatang. So that it's basically nafsu and iman. maybe maybe tasawuf is a methodology to refine your iman. And kemudian kata tadi, what is taqwa? Taqwa is a simple term, takut buat dosa. Because of your own conviction, God is watching you all the time. So there must be a fear in you to do things even in your thought, something malicious, something not normal. You should realize that it's wrong. Right? Then you stop doing it. Even if you've done it with indulgence, but you regret it so much, you feel ashamed actually. Okay, you should feel ashamed of touching Quran if you committed anything sinful to yourself. Even you feel that that book is not a mere book, right? That is communication between you and Quran, and between you and God actually. God telling you what to do. Yeah? So Quran is the one that given you the essence of the whole thing, and then you say that about ma'rifah. If I understand carefully as a layman, what is ma'rifah, what is taqwa? Ma'rifah is to reach a level of hidup yang barakah. Hidup barakah means you are gratified, happy with you're satisfied. There is no sense of chasing things. At your level, you're happy. That means hidup barakah ni berkat. You may be poor at your level, but there's a peace in you. How to achieve that actually, right? Like hidup barakah, God, I don't know which ayat, which surah in Quran said that we are created at different levels. So you don't have to fight to be like today, to be very good. He's very good, okay? But I don't have to fight like him to be like him. I must be happy with what my level is. I should know, whichever level that I am. Okay, some people, they are super rich, but they're not happy. They still chasing, they see the next one, right? So I think that is, to me, that is ma'rifah, that is equivalent to barakah. Maybe certain level achieve a different level. But that is, when you go too much, too deep, itu orang kata gila isim. Okay? When you start practicing, that means you're meditating, you're levitating. When you levitating, you're no longer Islam. Because Islam is real. No mysticism, is consciousness. You must be conscious. The moment you forget, even sembahyang tak. It's batal. Right? In your terlalu khusyuk, in your practice, to the point you're gone. You go to levitation, like meditation. That means batal was sembahyang tu. Maybe I'm not trying to show that. I just really, I just want to reaffirm.
Very well.
Okay. That is what I feel. Okay, simple. Jadi, and fardu ain and fardu kifayah. All the things that we do, I think the truth is corruption of, because as you go to second level, the stress was more and more. I think probably the influence of the Dutch, who understand very carefully, it tuned. If you look at Al-Fatani, Al-Fansuri, he was killed by another Muslim missionary because it converted the whole Muslim community to Sultanate. Jadi apa? Jadi lemah. That means they become towards the world. You have to, they forget about the world. They forget what Abu Bakar saying. Okay, you must work hard as if you're going to live for the next 1,000 years, and then you will be bad as if you're going to die tomorrow. It's a strong, and we as a Muslim should live well, very well, because you are the best ummah. Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
There wasn't a question in there.
No, that's a question.
Very well. Any more questions from the floor? Okay,
Jadi alhamdulillah saya cari dalam library saya terjumpa buku yang saya sebut tadi, Al-Ghazali Influence on Malay Thinker, a study of Sheikh Abdul Samad al-Falembani. It's published by Institute of Islamic Strategic Studies. Ini saya beli kat pameran buku lah. Benda biasa pun saya tak jumpa. So dia ada cerita lah zaman apa Syekh Abdul Samad al-Falembani, dia hasil karya-karya dia dan ringkasan Syiarul Salikin dalam ni. It's very good, around 250 pages. Ya. Cari online kalau masih jual ni apa? Pas you around itu saja apa my recommendation lah Kalau siapa yang bahasa Inggerisnya good, should have this one. Kalau tidak, kita baca Jawi, out lah kita. Juga baca 4 volume tu, dekat satu volume dekat 300 muka, 4 volume 1200 muka yang 4 jilid apa Syiar Salikin, terjemahan Ahmad apa Zamzami. Dia passed away, dia Kedah punya apa.
I think this was
Jadi ini yang recommendation lah. Beside that, dia ada study 4 ulama lain lagi, Syekh Daud Patani, Syekh Abdul apa yang Ismail Patani, dan one yang Tanbihul Ghafilin tu. Tapi Syiar Salikin ada ringkasan dia dalam bahasa Inggeris dia. So I recommend buy this book and search for it, and then you become serious seeker lah. Saya alhamdulillah saya hidup zaman 80-an di Gombak, jumpa dengan 2-3 ulama yang mengajar kitab. Satunya arwah Syekh Muhammad Sagir kan. So di mana dia tubuhkan jemaah, dia bila mengajar kitab dia tubuh jemaah dia. Jemaah dia tubuhkan satu penerbitan Fatania apa Khazanah Fatania. Dia terbit romanize all the Jawi book dia romanize diterbitkan. Put some ringkasan dan komentari. Jadi berjayalah dia hidupkan Dan kemudian yang kedua yang ulama yang hidup masa itu di Taman Melawar ialah Abdul Aziz Hanafi. Dia lecturer dulu tapi dia besara di Brunei, dia join PAS Kedah tak tahu dekat mana. Dia mengajar ringkasan Imam Ghazali masa tu. Syekh Muhammad Sagir dia mengajar Minhaj al-Abidin dengan Fariadul Faraid. Tapi dia mention jugalah kitab Sirah Salikin ni Cuma kat sini belah this side Bangi and my side now I do understand. Ada satu ustaz yang mengajar kitab Sirah Salikin iaitu di Jendrami. Iaitu Ustaz Hafiz Selamat. He is the one who still teaching Sirah Salikin. Yang ada ni saya tak jumpa lah because Sirah Salikin is a high level actually, not beginning level, middle or end already. Yang beginning level dia Hidayatul Salikin tadi lah. Jadi very difficult. Satu bahasa dia baca Jawi. Lepas tu ustaz tu boleh tak layak tak dia ada sanad dia ke ataupun kemampuan dia bahasa Arab dia. Normally ustaz moden ni dia bahasa Arab out, English pun out. Jadi lagi teruk lah. Kita at least we read English, we have extensive knowledge in English and we have survey already. What is lacking in Malay we back up with English. So that is my recommendation this book lah. Thank you. Pass through.
You can get it at Pelita Dihin.
You can get it at Pelita Dihin actually.
I don't think it's the market because
No, Pelita Dihin.
2016.
No, I just checked it last night. They have
Ada kan? Ada. I don't know where it's online available.
Pelita Dihin is PJ.
PJ.
Menara Majestic.
Kalau yang Romanes version ni pustaka Ashabak dekat Bangi tu ada. 4 volume.
Any other questions?
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih Tuan Rumah dan Tuan Syed. Saya cuma nak present a few views lah. I think just to comment, praise some opinion what was discussed just now. I think in terms of introducing the Islamic component in the civil service, I think the government has mentioned. I had my own experience doing this. In those days, I think mention of Ustaz Aziz Hanafi, we have been inviting him to our program, and unfortunately the opposition is from inside. It's from inside, and it comes from the same ethnic group. So it's a question of, dulu remember government introduced nilai-nilai murni. I think it was a very good concept, but unfortunately it sort of dies off. And at one time a group of us brought about a concept of Bina Insan. It was successful for a while. It's more ABIM punya related activity, but we had enough people to contribute. But unfortunately, if you want to go through the mainstream, introduce this, I think it's going to be there will be a block.
The changing of the authorities.
The changing of the authority. There will be a total block. It's not that the idea is bad. The idea is fantastic, it's very good, but unfortunately, the internal people within, we talk government, we talk about the majority in that, the civil service, and they have various level of knowledge. Alright? So, unfortunately, even at the top level, they really oppose what we were trying to do. It's not at the bottom. At the bottom, they are quite open to accept some of things that we, they say it's good, to bring in the good values within the civil service, but at the top they find it somehow they are mostly against it. So that is the unfortunate situation. But to reiterate Tuan Syed's idea just now, I think going to the mainstream, you can still do it, but do not take it as a failure. But yes, you got to go on, but there must be a secondary channel. That's where that would help to because this is where I think you tackle the people around it, so that the changes will occur not from inside but coming in from outside. I think if you have the mass, then you can effect the changes. Coming back to, I've been attending some of your sessions. I find that the level that you talk about is quite, for most of us, I think we have got not many years left to achieve that. So what I would like to suggest is, if you can, as I see that in knowledge, in seeking knowledge, of course there is a target, but it's not always that you reach the target. And also when you have a few years left in your life, that you are, your level is definitely, cannot be much more than that. So, but I'm sure that in the process, that as you gain knowledge, there could be some ideas of how you practice it. I mean, it doesn't mean that you only reach that level before you do all the things that you need to do. But as kind of the process ongoing. I don't know whether in the few sessions that you have, you might be able to interject some of these things. At least for me, I need those kind of things, and I'm sure there will be some others too. Thank you.
Okay, if I can respond to Datuk Sri, Datuk Sri Tala is of course was a prominent civil servant. He retired as DG of what ministry was it?
Domestic trade.
Domestic trade, yeah, about 10 years ago.
17 years ago. 15 years ago.
And you're right, that we have been very mindful about the level of the content that's delivered in this lecture series, right from the beginning, as Syed Muhiyuddin would agree. But that's the situation that we are in. It started off with this group of people who follows Syed. I've been complaining with them that you talk only to yourselves. Nobody else understands you. So this has been our attempt at massifying this body of knowledge. And of course, there is a gap. And we are trying to address the gap as effectively as possible, as we can, as we go along. But that's good feedback, that we are still not simple enough. One more point. You may have the mic.
Thank you. Just a comment. I think what we are seeing here is to put Islam, the faith, not to the face but to the heart. How to put that into the heart rather than the face. You don't want to produce Muslim, but we want to produce Islam in the real sense. Okay, you can get it. Now, I'm already 67, I may die tomorrow. Right now, what can I do? The only thing I need to do now is to be more calmer, a bit more rendah hati. I think that I don't get excited over things. I tried my very best, contain my anger. I think try to be a better person. Okay, I think as I can see that, what is the essence of Islam? If I may interpret and may comment that. Okay, I just want to reaffirm my belief. I think I come to a conclusion. Islam is respecting right. How to respect right? A right to your own body. Right? You cannot feed your body with bad food. right to your own mouth, so that you watch what you say, so that it doesn't come out foul. Right to your spouses, so that you respect existence, you respect right to have your time or whatnot. Right to the environment, that means the tree has right, you got to respect that. I think that's what we should try to change. In fact, I was at the Ngatam Ngaji today, I was overseeing something. I reminded them that belajar Quran ni bukan macam belajar chemistry. You hit outside the door, it's done. And I almost cried, because kita belajar Quran ni, even you teaching, your responsibility towards me, just not here, I left is nothing, right to the end, pada masa, there will be question, what do you teach? And what do I learn? And what do I do with that learning? So this is the true responsibility. Even you budak tu kata umur 6 tahun, but it will last a lifetime and beyond. So, and the key thing is adab. The whole thing is to produce adab, person who, that is the essence, that's the heart. Then what are the tools that need to teach the heart? If you look at Ghazali, he went out for a year in the desert, if I'm not mistaken, the history, right? To train himself, or to then come back, because he was at the peak of his career. He can have the best of the world. That's what the Caliphate offered him. But he left, and he come out as a fakir, if I'm not mistaken. Then he start writing and whatnot. If you look at his writing, all the writing that they go are wrong. All weak hadiths are used, but his character is later life. Am I right? Nah, itu je. Tapi the essence is didik hati. Kan macam mana nak mendidik hati? Apa yang perlu lihat? Apa toolnya? At the end of the day, what is the natijahnya? At the end of the day, become a better person. That's it. Become more pleasant. Try to train your heart. InsyaAllah.
Thank you once again, Dr. Hamzah. I was going to, over to you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Well, at least we have improvement. We have a mic today. Last time we don't have. So anyway, my question is with regards to pondok. We have so many pondoks in Malaysia, in Indonesia, even in all the Muslim world. But the general attitude for the average people, the normal people, the pondok education is not very good, very myopic, very backward, extremist. Despite all these great books that you mentioned just now, for example, there are many other books, of course, relating to Islam that are found nowhere to be taught except in pondok. But why is that the pondok education is so bad?
Can I answer? I like this question. It's again that we have experienced in our time, that the pondok education system is myopic because they don't understand the context. Whereas people coming from our kind of environment, we understand the context better, but we don't know what's being taught in the pondok. So it's a question of bridging the gap. And for us, now that we understand, if we understand our context better, the changes that have gone through our society, the false gods that have been, prop up over the past few generations and whatnot, to undo all this, we need to go back to the pondok education. That is, yeah, but if we don't have this context, the understanding of this context, you won't go anywhere either. Do I answer your question?
Sorry for coming back and forth, but I'm not trying to dispute that.
Yeah.
But my observation, and I think most people's observation is that most people, they won't, send their brightest children to pondok. They will prefer to send it to normal schools, private schools, international schools. Why? Because they think that pondok are not giving the best education for their kids, for their future, which is very sad, because if we have so much good books, good references that only they have the knowledge and they have the capacity to teach the children, why the pondok are so bad? That's the question.
To answer your question directly, is because if you're just coming from the pondok environment, you wouldn't understand the current issues that we face.
I have some opinion on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the question. I think in a way, because we were taught in a secular environment, so we have biasness towards the pondok. And then kita pun tak pernah lalu go to the pondok and all that. So we have this biasness in us, thinking the pondok are backwards and all that. That's what I think. Have you gone to the pondok? Have you studied at the pondok?
Well, you look at the pondok facilities, the pondok schools and everything. You compare with the normal schools, even just normal schools.
Right.
You cannot compare. That's how I feel.
Okay, so that's why I said I think it's the biasness that we have. Like macam dulu-dulu, all the ulama-ulama kita pun wali-wali pun datang di pondok, right? So but after we gone through, kita pergi overseas, we been taught the way rational thinking, all those things. So kita, I think we have formed that biasness in us lah. And then like you said juga, parents nowadays, we look at education is not the way orang dulu look at education. I think dulu knowledge is about macam tuan dia nak jadi orang, you know, because they believe in dunia dan akhirat, ada dunia lain. Macam kita sekarang, I think most of us hantar anak kita di international school, you know, that is more for the dunia. So I think we do have that biasness, and we do think that they don't understand the current issues. But kalau dengar orang dulu-dulu, dia orang dah nampak dah kan, the Jewish punya or the world punya issues coming to the world, to our current world, the food, the culture dulu, dia kata budaya kunik. Ulama-ulama dulu orang pondok dah cakap dah satu, but we don't really understand, we thought that's modernization. And now bila dah jadi then baru kita okay. I think that's my opinion lah. We ourselves have our own biasness.
Yeah, you put it very well, Abi. That's what it is about actually, that they are playing ground game, many of us. And that the whole objective of education is to be orang. And not to be a good worker, not to be a good citizen, to be a good human being. And that's what, I don't know, this is something that should be spoken about in the present context. Kita sekarang ada new slogan, masyarakat madani. Tapi even before anything lagi kan, the meaning of masyarakat madani dah corrupted dah. And when we first heard it, masyarakat madani, that's very Attasian. That's about building a civilization based on civilized people, and that civilizational pride is about having a society of good people, and not about development and money apa semua. Tapi it's unfortunate, and we live in times where how good we are also depends on how big our caste are, how rich we are, how high we rise in society, and it's all about the secular education system that we are in. Tapi when I say that if you send your children to a pondok environment now, if they're not exposed to the current issues that's faced in our society now, they wouldn't know how to act, they wouldn't know how to respond.
we can get apa?
Sama.
Dan ada sama. Ada lagi yang belakang tadi.
Start bring it in our next session.
Thank you. I think
Lancar tadi.
Ustaz, the missing link is that I think many of us has fly jauh sikit lah, which I think we should go back to the basic. What the pondok teaching is that kembali kepada basic. Yang Allah kata tidak aku jadikan manusia dan jin untuk beribadat kepada aku. So the teaching that in the pondok more inclined toward the akhirat. And of course, like what Tuan Nabi said, there's much influence by the colonial, the secular. That's what happened. And the picture has been painted that the pondok schools are very deplorable, bad, not enough syllabus and all that. But there are pondok school yang sekolah-sekolah tahfiz yang bagus sekarang. And one of the school that I recall in Kota Baru, Institute Al-Imam, where most of the students now, they are engineers, doctors outside. It's a tahfiz school, but after they have completed their tahfiz, these children are exposed to the present education. Yeah. So actually, it can be tailored to that system. Thank you.
This will have to be the last because it's reaching 12.
Jadi kita nak from pasal tahfiz, pasal sekolah-sekolah agama masyarakat. I think the mistake was terlalu ramai ustaz yang kita jana for the last 40 years. Jadi ramai nak cari tempat as a mean of livelihood to create one by one kan. And you study, there are 19,000 mosques in the country, but they were underutilized, tak ada siapa, kosong. Kenapa dia tak jadikan sebagai madrasah? Jadi pusat untuk guna, tapi everybody nak create satu-satu. And sebenarnya it's more mismanagement rather than the content. The mismanagement and the purpose of building. You create for what? You create for yourself, you create for the people, for the children, you create for religion. Okay, for example, dulu punya ulama, they never ask for fee. People just give. Right now, if I'm happy with you, I think there's a value in your that give to my heart some peace. I just take my money and give. I don't care. Now I don't put a fee. Berapa ramai yang ulama-ulama dulu, poor, you tell me? They never ask for anything. Kan dia ngajar Quran, dia tak pernah letak. Tapi orang kampung bagi, semua bagi, anak dia belajar pandai kan, pandai mengaji, pandai, dan dia ajar sedikit Arab. But of the last 40 years, things are different here. When you go back the history of Islam, madrasah dulu, adakah pondok-pondok macam kita? Ataupun lebih pada madrasah, mesti ada masjid, mesti all surrounded by and are funded by the government, mesti by the Khalifah. And most of these Muslim scholars, top philosophers, top lawyers in I like Andalusia as an example because they are European stocks. They come from, when the first 15 years, they just learn agama. They don't learn geography, they don't, but after that they move. Okay, to be an engineer, I'm a chemist. I don't need to learn chemistry from sampai form 5. At university I start, and I can be, in 4 years I can be trained. What I need to learn in the first 4 years is the basic fundamental how to control myself. First. Okay? Secondly, I must learn how to read. I think the best they should start is to read, to teach languages. So they can read Arabic, they can read English, they can read German, so they can look at it. Mostly is teaching the tool of acquiring knowledge. That should be the essence of the teaching. But the purpose of having, kita nampak banyak masalah, sometimes gayism, gay, LGBT can be resolved to this. You look at the Kedah, budak-budak kecil merata je minta sedekah nak makan tau. Because why? The bigger boy, they not under facility, the facility was poor, underfunding, kan? Tak ada proper teacher. They resort the big boy will bully the small boy. Berapa ramai budak sekolah menengah pergi tanda tangan minta sedekah? Tak ada kan? So these are the things that we should be very, very concerned. It's a very serious matter. It's not but because it destroyed Islam sebenarnya. In terms of thinking, in terms of character when they go out, and they all become very, very dogmatic. Halal haram, halal haram. You see, it's because we are not created to be a robot. We are not created to read Quran perfectly. It's what should be read. To take wudu is more the intention. So it is like niat. Your niat must be correct. You practice is God. It's leave it to God. You try your very best, but the rest you leave it to God. That was should be the essence of teaching. How to create more people like this. How to create society is more balanced in terms of the right and wrong. Okay? People ask me, okay, satu babi dari kat tengah kampung, when you're hungry, dengan satu kambing, which one you should tembak and eat? The pig or the kambing? Which one at that time, babi is halal, kambing is haram, because you tembak kambing, you curi orang punya. You tembak babi, you makan, you just ask God for forgiveness. Otherwise, you have to ask forgiveness from the owner. That is the philosophy. That's I ask. Okay. That is what we think about. As far as sekolah agama kat sini, it's a good school. It's nothing wrong. Provided it's run properly, well-funded, qualified teacher with good facility. Bukan sekolah agama nampak miskin. Cikgu agama lowest pay. Imam bila kat masjid pun lowest pay. Okay, sorry, get me out of hand.
Yeah. Maybe we'll invite you to give a talk the next time. We'll have Syed Muhiyuddin to sort of summarize the session because he's very popular. He has got to run off to another session after this.
Okay, mashallah, I'm very happy to learn actually, because I always enjoy coming back to number 4 because the audience are very well experienced, and they say sometimes petua mengatasi ilmu, yes? Because petua comes from experience that you have observed from your very own environments. So these are all, I think these perspectives are very enriching and very important to have in a round table like this. And this is, I think, one of the benefits, and we have to thank Haji Kamaruddin for putting all this together. Otherwise, we couldn't have this sort of discussion, isn't it? And where the purpose of conversation, as apart from the prefix con, meaning to say to unite. So to arrive at one agreement, a consensus. That's the purpose of a conversation. So we are having this so that we come closer and closer to the truth, hopefully, inshallah. Yes, away from our biases, away from our own perspective, until we reach the best possible need. I cannot address every single one of the things that was mentioned, but briefly, I think I'm in agreement that we have to have a proper session to discuss the practical aspects of the implication of what we learned today. But one of the things which is basic is that we have to distinguish between pondok education in terms of its philosophy of education and its pedagogy compared to the discussion of the sundry matters. That's another matter. Although we're not saying that it is not a problem, although we're not saying that because I don't think that the problem of its facility that's not integral to the meaning of what pondok education is. So if you see that the problem is in the facility, the problem is in the issue of the teacher not being well paid. There's also another problem, yes, which is as a result of biases. As you said, we tend not to send the brightest students, the brightest children to pondoks. But this will only worsen the cycle, isn't it? Because one day they're going to be teachers. So we contribute to that, isn't it? So the brightest ones, like Imam Al-Ghazali, yes, he was truly a genius. Yes. But he was a genius who was sent to the right place. Yes, as you said, that he underwent an Islamic education first before everything else. Ibn Sina, regardless of whatever we may disagree with regards of his philosophy, first and foremost had a religious education. Because first and foremost, you need to start by educating the soul and spirit. Yes, but if you do not start with that, yes, you can be in the best facility in the world, but you're still barbaric, isn't it? How many are people who are, that's why they coin the term wolves of Wall Street, isn't it? Some of them perhaps have been reading their staple is to read, the New York Times since India cradle, yes. But what do they do with the sort of knowledge that they have? Do they know what it means to be human? Yes, yang balik pada itulah, we were created to be servants of Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala. But alongside the ubudiyah is also the amanah of khilafah. Yes, meaning to say how to administer the world as God's vicegerents. So as God's vicegerents, certainly we need to expand. Yes, and this is part and parcel of Imam Al-Ghazali's Ihya. He speaks about the fardu ain and the fardu kifayah, and we must not restrict our understanding of fardu kifayah to maksudnya sembahyang jenazah. No, that's not fardu kifayah. That's an expression of fardu kifayah. Fardu kifayah means to fulfill your collective responsibility, which may include economic responsibility, which may include educational responsibility, which may include leadership. So to take an example, yes, Imam Al-Ghazali criticized his generation because everyone was so keen, yes, to send their children to study fiqh, because that was how a person gains prominence in society, how a person gains employment, how a person rises up the social ladder. So they studied Islamic law. So tak ada orang belajar hijamah, kata Imam Ghazali. No one learned cupping, which was the paradigm of medicine back then. So therefore, if in an entire village everyone becomes religious scholars, tapi tak ada orang that take care of health, the whole village will be blamed. So similarly in our time, we need to restore the proper meaning of fardu ain and fardu kifayah. We need to have the historical dimension, and this contributes also to the failure of, we cannot say, it's difficult to say general, but in essence our scholars had a conception of what is called the classification of knowledge, the maratibul ulum, in which the intellectual sciences was merged together with the religious sciences, and the intellectual sciences is classified accordingly based on need and nobility. Yes, so now we have advanced considerably in the intellectual sciences, in the social sciences, in the practical and the applied sciences. But now the problem is that we have this blinkered specialization, the barbarism of specialization. A person who is trained in one of the practical and applied sciences, dia tak tahu nak bawa diri macam mana. A person who perhaps have mastered, although very difficult to find, mastered the usuluddin and sharia, does not have a trade to support himself. All of these things are basically just symptoms of corruption of knowledge also. So if we wish to tackle and deal with this problem, first we need to expand our historical dimension, as has been, so that we know, yes, where the pondok derives its idea from. Yes, we cannot exclude from our vision Andalusia, Baghdad. We cannot exclude from our vision the understanding of how the madrasah, how they were funded, and the ecosystem that supported the scholarship and students. How the madrasah maintained their independence through endowments. Yes, basically, if you look at the modern universities, yes, be it Cambridge or Oxford, how did they get the idea of colleges being supported by endowments to maintain the independence of scholars? How did they get the idea of the ijazah as the license to teach? How did they get the idea, yes, of the tutor-student relationship, or the idea of tutelage? These are all derived from the madrasah system. So if you read George Makdisi's, yes, study, yes, on how Western, the Islamic origins of Western education, you will find all of these things there. So right now the challenge is how to preserve the best of both. In other words, yes, the pondok system is unmatched with regards to its content, is unmatched with regards to granting students what they need with regards to knowing themselves in relation to Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala. Of course, bearing in mind systemic issues, as you said just now, like of course in the past it was only the most talented, yes, the most talented are tasked with this task. I mean, the fact that we had the Sheikh Sheikh Abdul Samad, you will see that these all come from a pedigree of households of scholars. Yes, these are the brightest minds in the village, the brightest minds in these regions. They were, if you look at Tuku Palo, yes, he had the know-how of how to be advisor to the Sultan in his time. Yes, these were people. Sheikh Hamzah Fansuri was a well-traveled man. He knew Siam, he knew Baghdad, he knew all the corners of the world. So when they write as brilliant poetry as they did, it's not a surprise because they were geniuses. Yes. So right now we want to invest Islamic education in our children, and at the same time, yang katalah secular stream, and at the same time those in the Islamic stream, what we can advise as what Haji Kamaruddin said to expand, yes, on the contextual learning. What we must incorporate, and this Professor Attas has argued consistently for, we must incorporate in the pondok system the study of history properly done. Yes, the study of history, and this is not something alien to other pondoks. If you look at the system in Tarim in Hadramaut, yes, the Rubat Tarim, of course they teach you fiqh, they teach you the linguistic sciences, what is called the liberal arts, so that you can read all the books. They teach you tafsir. But in the evenings, yes, they have a session called the Rauha, where not only do they teach ethics and spirituality, they teach travel literature, manaqib. They teach travel literature, rehla. They teach manaqib, yes, biographical history. And all of these things form part and parcel of the makeup of the student. Why? Because as they hear rehla, yes, a particular genre, which is as we said, travel scholarship, that's how they know about Southeast Asia. That's how they know about Morocco. That's how they know about Turkey. And in this rehla is described, yes, the way of life of the people, and so on and so forth. So certainly we cannot suffer, yes, the effect of the reduction and the restriction of knowledge merely to just how to perform your ibadah. Yes, certainly a person who is, when you look at who our great scholars were, and these were not too long ago, as late as the 60s and 70s, Habib Alawi bin Tahir al-Haddad, the Mufti of Johor, more than 2,500 fatwas. 2,500 fatwas. How can a person be so productive and to at the same time to be a historian, yes, and to be a scholar of world history? To be a scholar of world history. Okay, and to be well versed with Dutch scholarship, European scholarship. When you look at his Mudkhal, the history of the venture of Islam in Southeast Asia, he was familiar with all the writings of the Orientalists. That was the kind of scholar that we produced. Yes, and he was a product of the madrasa. Yes, but of course because of such talents, yes, Abi Ali bin Tahir al-Haddad finished reading the Ihya at 12 years old. So geniuses were given such routes in the past. Where do we send our geniuses now? Yes. Alhamdulillah, we have somebody in our midst like Professor Syed al-Attas. Yes. But this is how we begin the task of restoration, the task of healing. The idea is to combine again Fardu Ain, integrated within Fardu Kifayah, interpreted again within an expanded and updated classification of knowledge. And this is where you have to understand the role of Istak in the present time. But more on that later, inshallah. Okay, inshallah, then we recite Al-Fatiha to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions and the great scholars of our tradition, Imam Al-Ghazali, Sheikh Abdul Samad al-Falembani, and the arwah of our forefathers, and those who have benefited this ummah. We ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala elevate their stations in Jannah, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to benefit from their knowledge. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expand our understanding of the religion. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless our host Haji Kamaruddin for putting all these things together, for his generosity in hosting us at his home. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all the attendees. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect our children from all the fitna of our time. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless our gathering today. making an asbab for us to enter into Jannah, insyaAllah. Amin, amin, ya Rabbal Alamin. Wa bismil asrar al-Fatiha. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.
Thanks, Syed, and thanks everyone. There's some quick way and some tidbits for you to have. Please help yourself, and there's coffee, of course, as usual. Thank you very much. Till the next time.